review of last week and then look ahead to what we'll have for this week. So, any questions or comments from anyone? Pretty quiet. All right, let's get started then. So, move this thing out of the way. Here we go. Oh, first week was good. Excellent. Thank you, Marika. So, in our first week, we had all of our course essentials and things. We had our H5P at a glance, but what I want to show you is that we have added some additional information here. So, under H5P at a glance, we have this new item, considerations for learners with low to no internet access. So you don't get to see him on this meeting because it is well past the end of his day and he has a newborn baby at home. But my colleague Michael actually facilitates this course with me. And he put this together in response to questions that we get often when we talk about H5P. And that is what happens if our users don't have consistent access to high speed internet. And I always, as people who do this as a job, we recognize how frequently that happens, even though not everyone in the world realizes that sometimes when people leave our where we work or where we're teaching, they don't necessarily have consistent access to high speed internet at home. Or maybe they do, but they're sharing that with other people in the house. And so their connection isn't great. So, Michael's put together a document here for us all about things to think about when we're building our H5P if we know that our users are not necessarily going to have consistent high speed internet. And he talks about when you can download the H5P content to work offline. And so the core version, so that's the blue icon where we're building H5P in the content and then adding it using the blue icon into the course. That can be downloaded through our OpenLMS mobile app and likely as well through the Moodle mobile app if you are not a client with us. And then people can work on that content offline. When they connect online again, everything uploads, completion goes through. The thing to know here is that things like video is not going to play if people are offline. It doesn't matter really what we're doing, especially if we are linking out to something like a YouTube video. So that's important to know. If H5P content is embedded into another content type in Moodle instead of on its own, you will not be able to use that offline. So if I were building out a lesson and I embedded an H5P inside a Moodle lesson, that H5P content would not be available for download. So those are a couple of things to know as far as being able to access the content through the mobile app. Most of the content types are accessible through the mobile app, but not all. Other things here are what contributes to image file size and what can we do about it? Michael was saying that honestly, image size he thinks is a bigger issue than video because most people know video isn't going to play if people are offline, but they often expect those images to load on low bandwidth or things like that. And very large images actually will not load well for people if they don't have consistent high speed internet. So, Michael talks a bit about understanding the size of a photo, how to bring it down smaller, and he even gives you a video here to help explain image size in H5P. And he talks a little bit about if someone's accessing something, let's say from their iPhone, how, you're looking at a top out of about 160 dpi, which is dots per inch. And many images are much higher resolution than that. So you can see where we can start to have problems. This page will walk you through everything you need to know if you're thinking about building content for an audience that doesn't always have consistent and reliable access to high speed internet. So be sure to check this page out so that you can learn more about that. From time to time, as we go along, we will add some additional information here, resources and things like that, and we'll always let you know when we do. Our first forum this week was what is interaction and why is it important? And I think what we've probably found as we've gone through this is that interaction means something a little bit different for each of us. And so we've gone through and we've been reading these, and we are actually offering. We're doing two cohorts of this course right now. We had enough people. We're doing two cohorts, and in the other cohort, someone said something that was really interesting to me. And they said they felt that interaction was a reciprocity. So it was reciprocal between the person who is on the learning end and the content and the person who has created it. And what they meant was that when the person who's learning puts something in, they're expecting to get something out from the content. And I thought that was a really interesting observation and one that's very true. But as you go through this, you'll start to see that people have ideas about what interaction is and how it can help them to choose the best tools for their learners, but also why it's important. And the reason it's important is a little bit different to each person. And the reason that this matters to us is because when we're building content, we're building it really for a lot of different people. And what they may need or want or view as interaction may differ. And sometimes we find out about what those needs are by sharing our information here. We looked at course presentation, and I'm going to showcase two of them here for you. Let me actually come up here. We have the first course presentation, which was about the flipped classroom. Now, a couple things to know here. This cover image is actually just a screenshot from an old PowerPoint slide deck. I do have alternative text in the background that states the flipped classroom, so there's no loss of what's happening or that this is a title slide. Each of the remaining options in here is actually just text. So the background is from my old slide deck, my branded slide deck, but I use the text editor in H5P to put the rest in here. This is important because if we just take screenshots or download our previous PowerPoints as a PNG, and try to put those images in, someone who is blind or visually impaired or has dyslexia or for whatever reason is using a screen reader is not going to have access to the text. The screen reader can't read it from an image. So what we've done here is just use the background image as a decorative image. It doesn't really have any meaning. It's more for aesthetic. And everything that you see here on the slide was typed in directly using the H5P text editor. Another item. As I have all of this text on this page and I have this test your knowledge option off to the side here, we've used the button instead of the poster to create our interaction. Now, I think that it's very unassuming on this page and would be very easy to miss, which is one of the reasons we built it this way. I have seen people put in an image or larger text that says, test your knowledge and then continue so that users are drawn to it. But if you click this button, you will have a full pop-up that covers all of the text for someone to interact with. They can answer and check, see how many points they've gotten, retry, or show that solution. These pieces show solution, retry. Those are all configured in the behavior section of your course presentation. The summary screen is pretty important in a course presentation because when someone gets to the summary screen, they see a list of each slide that has an interaction, their score on those, and their total score. Even though it doesn't look like it, these different slide titles are actually links. And so if I click one, I will automatically go to that slide where I can continue those interactions. And then I can kind of keep working through and finish things. And now when I come to my summary screen, I see that I've earned credit for these two and my total score is 2 out of 3. I can choose to show the solutions, which will take me back to these individual pages here where I can see whether I had the question right or wrong. Now, because this question is in a button, I don't see it as clearly on the page. I have to click the button to see what the right answer was. Whereas for the other types where I've put my item in as a poster, I automatically on that slide see the options. The one that is correct will be highlighted in green and have a check mark. And I can see that it's the one I chose because the radio button is ticked here. Now I'd like to take a look at the next H5P, which is one that was created by a client. This was created by a client of ours named Alpha Gamma Delta. They are a Greek life sorority. And this is something that they created here. But Marika asks, when I say poster, do I mean it sits on the page? Yes, Marika. So when it's a poster, it's right there on the page and I don't have to click the button to access it. I can still make it as large or as small as I want, and we'll see an example of it here in just a minute. One thing to know, while I love the visual appeal of this particular course presentation, one thing to note is that it's all images. So nothing is being read here for a user. Similarly, nothing on this slide is being read either because this is just an image. So if I were using a screen reader, I would not be able to access any of this. This goes through the whole presentation. These things were likely created in something like PowerPoint where people are using, their own specific text or fonts that they like. But you could certainly use the text editor here in H5P to add information here. You could have this image because it's just decorative and use the text editor to put this information in. As we go forward, one of the other things that happened is that when we created these questions, and these are the example of a poster size question, answer here is actually would normally be the question prompt. Where it says above it, makeup can be worn during initiation, that is part of the image and not accessible. But if we added it right in here, people could choose their answer. They also have an auditory option here designated by this little like speaker with the sound waves. Um, when I make a choice, I actually hear something specific, whether I have something right or wrong. Now you can see from the sizing here, I have to scroll to see information. I also have some issues here with the blue on orange text, but variety of ways that people can build things out. This again is a question where um, the true false and the I can wear a pant outfit to initiation is actually an image, and then answer here and true false is built in using H5P. So you could replicate this experience very easily without using having all of the prompts and answers as an image in the background, and instead just making sure that you have appropriately lined up and utilize the question option here. Again, they have that summary screen. Now I'm in full screen mode right now, which I got to down in the right-hand corner. You will see two arrows pointing away from each other. And if you click those, you come to full screen. When you want to leave full screen, you can click the two arrows that are pointing toward each other and the screen will come out of full screen, or you can just escape on your keyboard and you are back in business and out of that full screen mode. Course presentation is a nice way to utilize the slide decks and information that we already have. You can add additional items to those slide decks. So I know when I used to use PowerPoint, I often would just have the link out to videos and then I'd have to click the link and it would open in another tab. But when I'm using course presentation, I can incorporate the video so it takes up the whole slide or part of the slide, and I can add different types of questions. Two types of questions you would have seen in this past week are multiple choice and single choice set. And the only real difference between them is that a multiple choice question is one question where I can have one or more answers, standard multiple choice. Single choice set is I can have one or more questions that progress in a sequence where there's one correct answer for each question. So if I put a multiple choice question on my slide, I answer just the one and move forward. Single choice set, I could string maybe 5 questions together, and as I answer one, see whether or not it's correct, there'll be a pause. That question will move off the screen and a new one will appear. So I can have people answer several questions on one slide, but just use one interface for that. Any questions or comments about course presentation? All right, let's see. Go ahead, Marika.
Um, do you have any recommendations around the best way to use course presentations so is as accessible as possible? Like, are there any hints and tips around maybe not overloading a page, or is there anything from your experience that you could kind of give some advice?
Yeah, I think that I try to preview that page, and if I feel like it starts to look a little overwhelming, I definitely break it up. I typically don't go beyond like 3 or 4 bullet points. I found that in PowerPoint, I was able to add more bullet points, but the way an H5P lays out, I actually can have less text on the screen, and then it gets overwhelmed more quickly. If you're choosing a background, you definitely want to be cautious about the contrast between the color in the front and the background. So if you have a dark font in the front. You don't want that background to be too dark either. You can also, and we'll post some of these resources, there's a color wheel out there that will show you which colors you should not put together. So on that one, we saw the blue and the orange. Definitely not a good choice. There's not enough contrast there, which causes accessibility problems. I try to limit the different content types to 2 content types per page. So sometimes I'll have a little bit of text to introduce a video and then the video plays. Or I might have something with a question on the same page, but I try not to put more than 2 content types there. And I know it sort of follows some of the old best practices that we had when we were doing PowerPoint or creating, slide decks or things like that. But ideally, when you look at it, it's about assessing whether or not there seems like there's a lot on the page. And if you were brand new to this, would you understand where you should go for that content? Those are my big things that I like to point out with course presentation. Manny, no limit to the number of slides you can have. You can have as many slides as you want. We all hope and pray that our faculty won't create those 350 slide decks anymore. But if they were to do so, they could absolutely create that. And Gabriel, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, you've answered most of the questions as other people asked. But for example, when using video, what limit would you put on the length of that video where the video doesn't overpower the presentation?
Yeah, so I try to follow the if it's the only video in a presentation, I go for 15 minutes or less. If it's going to be longer than that, I just chunk it up into different videos. I'll splice it and I add interactions no less than every 5 minutes. We know that after about 5 minutes, people tend to tune out if we're on one subject, but also we're asking them to retain 15 minutes of conversation without an opportunity to actually solidify that with an interaction. So if I'm going to have a longer video, something that's going to go up to 15 minutes, I definitely will make it an interactive video, which I can add into course presentation and add interactions on top. And we're going to take a look at interactive video this week so you can see what I mean there. Um, I have in the past had course presentations, though, that were primarily focused on video. I had just a couple introductory slides to lay out objectives and what I really wanted the learner to get from the video. And then the primary focal point for that course presentation was a video. In that case, I went longer, but I did add the interactions in.
Okay, so what would be the optimal time you would expect someone to spend on the course presentation?
I try to chunk any learning activity to 30 minutes or less, and even that's a stretch. Anytime I can create a learning activity that's 15 minutes or less, I think I'm in good shape, even if that means there's multiple learning activities for them to go to. And that's for a couple of reasons. Kind of like for all of us when we're trying to do this, we are trying to come in and fit this around other things going on. And when people take courses and they're accessing content online, they don't typically have a really long block to devote to it like they might if they were in the face-to-face classroom or training arena.
Thanks,
So
Amy.
you're welcome. All right. So the next thing we looked at was branching scenario. And we have this eating disorder branching scenario, which I created right when branching scenario very first came out. And I was at an organization that had absolutely no budget. So everything was based off of text and things that we could find. But branching scenario let us create a type of experience for people that let them experience something. So at the time, I was working for a nursing college, and nursing was the only thing they taught. And ideally, you hope that everyone is going to go into clinical and do practice and have access to all of these different experiences. But it's not practical to expect that. You're never going to get everyone in to see a patient who's been diagnosed with bulimia or has had a heart attack or has diabetes or something. But we can create a scenario where everyone has an option to come through and work through a scenario for a patient like that. And that's what we did with branching scenario. There are many ways to use branching scenario. Anytime you need a situation to unfold, or you want someone to have the actual experience of, if this were a real life situation, here are the different choices you could be presented with. Choose one and see what happens. Then branching scenario is a great option. question that came up earlier today is whether or not we can configure the start page, and we absolutely can. We could replace a different image here, have a title. We can even change this button to read something other than start the course. When I first built this, I actually didn't know that I could change that language, so it didn't say start the course because that was a little confusing. But as people come into that branching scenario, you'll see that I had played around with some different background colors here on the slides as an example. The background color of blue is often considered fairly calming and accessible because you have high contrast with a lot of the darker colors like black or gray or even dark blue. And on the next slide, I actually had a lighter, if I can get there. Oh, proceed. If this one is even lighter blue, bluish gray. And so all of these are fairly accessible for background colors. We went through a pretty significant course presentation here to start, and then I had a video which now doesn't play. Branching scenarios are typically going to take a learner longer to get through. So this is one of those things that when you're putting it in a course, you want to be very clear about what the expected time to complete is so that people set aside that amount of time. Because if they start the branching scenario and then they leave and come back, they're going to start at the beginning, but also they're not getting that full experience. So I do always, in my descriptions, let my learners know about how long I expect it would take them to complete. And I give them a range because if they're struggling and they're heading the wrong way in the branching scenario, that's going to take them a little bit more time than if they are moving forward in the direction we want them to. After we've kind of gone through everything, we give the scenario, and then we have our first question. And the icon for this looks like a crossroads. I've come to a crossroads and I have to choose which way to go. I can create as many options here as I want. So I can have, 2 or 3 options that someone is choosing from. And when I click this, it will tell me whatever is next. So these are all just things I've built in. When I am creating branching scenario, it's actually very easy to create. So if we, here it is, come into this H5P, you'll see that we have the steps for creating the branching scenario as well as images. And in some cases, we actually have short videos. So just very short videos of what to do. Once we're in the branching scenario, we have a couple of options here: course presentation, text, image hotspot, interactive video, and just a plain video. When we want to add them, we just click and drag this item into place, and we can move things around. Once we've dragged it there, we'll automatically get the editing interface. Now, often people will say, listen, this branching scenario is kind of the culmination of other things we've done in class. Can I reuse some of that content? And the answer to that is absolutely. So whenever you go into an H5P item and you click to edit it, you will get an option in there to copy something. So here we are, we've gone in and we are editing this. You'll see we come right over here to edit it in the content bank, and we have this copy option here. Then we come into our branching scenario, and under reuse content, we actually just click and paste what's on our dashboard, which is, or on our clipboard, which is the other content we already created, and then we can drag it into the scenario. So if I have built things like an accordion activity, or in this case, a course presentation slide, or something like that, I can actually reuse it by copying it and pasting it in here and then adding it to the branching scenario. As you build through, you really will have very few options as far as setting the logic for your branch, meaning you can have people progress one way or another. So they can go to whichever branch in the scenario you want, or the scenario can come to an end. When you create an end, you can create a custom end, so each end can look a little bit different. You can have different screens there, different things that people land on as they go through, or you can have them jump to another branch. Marika asked again to see the copy paste. So what we do here is we'll let this play through. We have this other content for Safe Exam Browser. We come in to our content bank and we click edit. And right up here, we have the copy option for something that already exists. We just click it. Then we come over to our branching scenario, and under reuse content, we just click down below and it will automatically paste whatever we copied previously as an option there, and we can drag it on into the branching scenario. Yep, it'll sit right there. That's correct. You're welcome. So one of the questions we often get is, how do you build this? Like, what do you do to plan for this? And there are a lot of different ways. So Michael is a big fan of using post-it notes, and he arranges the post-it notes. He reuses them, so he like can do the start, and then he kind of writes in pencil, and he arranges this whole branching scenario using post-it notes because he finds them easier to move around. I'm a big whiteboard person, and though I don't have a whiteboard big enough in my office, I have a window right here, and dry erase markers work great on windows, and I can actually map out my branching scenarios on my window. I've seen people do the same thing on their shower walls, all of these creative things that people have come up with. But one of the other things people sometimes do is create an Excel spreadsheet, and then they use smart art to create the little items and start to move them into place just to organize them. The benefit to that is that you're not limited by a page cutoff in how you view it. Whereas, like if I create in Word, I get sort of limited. And when I'm building out this branching scenario, kind of mapping it out, it can look kind of unwieldy. I don't drill down too far when building them. I have my general concepts, where I think something's going to end and how I'm going to loop people through, and then I build the content out in here. As I'm building, I can always build information in, and then I can preview. I have an option to always click preview in the upper right hand corner of my branching scenario, and that will take me from the beginning all the way through. But if I've already built out all of these items, I don't want to start from the beginning every single time. I can actually just start and go stepwise. So if I built the first chunk and now I've built the second chunk and I just need to preview the second chunk because I've already been through the first, I can actually click on any content item and a little cog will appear to the right. And when I click that cog, I'll have an option to start the preview from that point forward. So I can just preview stepwise instead of always having to run through the entire scenario every single time I want to preview things. When I'm done, I'm just going to click the done and save options and my branching scenario will save. I would say that branching scenario has become pretty popular recently as people are trying to recreate some of those things we were once doing in face to face, that role playing, the option to give people some decision making power. It's also a nice tool if you are trying to mentor someone into a position. So, whether it's leadership or to become a teacher, for example, and you want to present them with some of the conversations and interactions that they would have in the everyday world that you don't have the chance to model over and over again, you can actually use a branching scenario to let them work through those things. There doesn't necessarily have to be wrong answers. Just like in life, there are many ways that we can handle any given situation. How we address that situation might have different consequences or reactions or things as we go along. Doesn't necessarily make that a wrong choice. And we can still recreate that same thing in a branching scenario as well. So, what are our thoughts on branching scenarios or anything there I hadn't answered yet that you might still have questions about? Go ahead, Gabriel.
Not a question, just a comment. Looks awesome. Looks
Thanks.
like you can get everything from H5P and get everything into a branching scenario.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that you could put the course presentation in.
yeah, I really like it. I think that what it does for us is replace, in a lot of ways, the need for SCORM and other authoring tools that we might be paying a lot of money for.
Yeah, I'll look forward to building one.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, let's keep moving. This week, we are going to look at drag and drop content types. And I actually really, really like drag and drop content types. We have, of course, our book here about using them and how we can use them to increase interaction. And if we look at our different options, our different examples here, this first one is actually it is a sequencing activity. So I have the original 3 Star Wars films, and they are draggable items. And then I have these gray areas over here. These are drop zones. Now, when I built this one out, I unintentionally set the behavior to indicate the correct drop zone, and I'll show you what I mean. If I click on A New Hope, there is a very faint dotted line that appears around the top box because that is where A New Hope fits. And if I click Return of the Jedi, the same happens at the bottom and Empire Strikes Back comes in the middle. And that was just an unintended consequence when I was setting this up, and I inadvertently ticked in the behavior area to indicate the drop zone. You do not have to do that. You can absolutely avoid that as you're building things out. So that is my option there for this. You'll notice that I think we have limited the container size on the H5P, which is causing some issues with responsiveness because I don't have the option to check my items down here. So I'll work to get that fixed. If you are noticing that you're missing controls or there's not an option to check or to move forward, it is because I definitely am having a problem with my responsiveness, and I will work on that. Another way you could use drag and drop is for sorting. So if I had, you know, 3 different items or 10 different items, and each of the items fits into one of 3 boxes or classifications. And I can do this. I can think of a million different ways to do this, but we've done this before when separating herbs and spices or when separating nouns and pronouns for people who are younger or even older for teaching English courses or safety hazard, not a safety hazard. And I have basically two drop zones, and I am able to put as many draggable items in a drop zone as I want. So I can also use it in addition to sequencing as a sorting bucket. This one, though, is a matching option. So what I have here are some accounting terms, and my draggable items are down here at the bottom, and my drop zones are off to the left. You pick where all of these things go when building this out. And so as I go through, I can drop items. Now, I did something similar here where this will only go into the appropriate. I can't put it in the wrong place. And when I get to the right place, the background changes color. Again, these are all things that are set in the behavior option as you're building your drag and drop. And so the key when building drag and drop is to make sure that you are very carefully reading the instructions as you go. And they are very explicit. There's lots of information in there, and there are tutorials available as well whenever you're inside an H5P. And I'll show you that in just a minute. This here is a slightly different activity. This is called drag the words. And in this one, this is one of my favorites to create because it's so easy. I can copy and paste a passage of text in, and then any item that I want to become a draggable item, I put an asterisk in the front and an asterisk at the end of the word, and it automatically becomes a draggable item. And so the drop zone is automatically created. And then this one I have built out appropriately. So I can place these items anywhere. Nothing highlights as I'm dragging them into place. And I can use this to complete this or complete a sentence, complete a whole paragraph. It's really up to you how detailed you get. Now, one thing to know about drag and drop with H5P is you actually don't have the option to put in an extra draggable item. So I can't put in one extra or two extra choices. It doesn't work that way. It won't let me do that. So that is definitely one of the drawbacks here is that the number of draggable items matches the number of drop zones. I can't kind of have an extra one in there. But then what we have after you look at these couple of examples is all about building a drag and drop activity. And we have a video in here that walks you through everything. Under the additional settings for drag and drop, that will be an important one. That's where you can learn about what happens when we end up accidentally highlighting drop zones and things like that, and some of the more advanced settings that are available in drag and drop, some of which are also available elsewhere. I like the drag and drop content type when I want people to match things or sequence things. It is considered accessible, although on a webinar earlier today, someone brought up if someone has a dexterity impairment, and so using a mouse is difficult for them, clicking and dragging would be difficult. H5P lists this as a fully accessible content type, which means it must have some keyboard navigation capability because that's part of accessibility, though I have yet to figure it out. So it is important to remember. Our colleague Jamie, who also works on this course with us, recently took a course that was all about doing your taxes, but it was specific for people who have cerebral or cerebral palsy. So everyone has some degree of mobility or dexterity impairment. And one of the things that she noted was that in the course, whenever there was an activity like this that might cause an accessibility concern for someone or someone might have questions about, there was a disclaimer that if there were any questions or hardships or difficulties or problems with accessibility, it gave the learner an exact email to reach out to someone for, letting them know it's perfectly okay if you contact me and you have found a problem. We'll work through it. I'll either have something alternative for you or I will work to fix it. And I thought that was a really nice approach, and I wanted to share that with you all tonight as well. Um, you will see us post in this course tomorrow in course announcements and probably in one of the resource sections some links out to the accessibility chart from H5P, as well as some general accessibility links to help you along the way in creating your accessible content. So that's drag and drop. You're really just looking at the drag and drop activity and the drag the words activity. Those are the two primary options here. We also have a spotlight session this week all about how to post an H5P to a forum. And what you're going to find here is that in forums, if you have in your Addo editor, no, you won't. I apparently have to fix that one. In your Addo editor, you will have, let me actually go into one and I'll show you. Let's see. So in many Addo editor bars here, and that's your editing bar here, you'll have this H5P button. And this H5P button allows you to add content. If I click this, I can then browse the repository and pull something directly from my content bank and embed it into a forum. So if I have a forum for my learners and I want there to be an H5P in it, that's the way to go. Forums in Moodle will not allow you to embed things in an iframe because their iframes are not supported in places where learners can post content, so assignments and forums. Teachers can use iframes in other places, but they don't work in forum. And so your best option is to use that H5P embed button that's coming right in that Addo editor toolbar. We can learn all about that this week in the posting to an H5P forum. And let's just fix this while we're on here. Sometimes when we back up and restore or import course content, it does not relink information. I think it's something very specific to our site because I have not encountered this on other sites, but sometimes I have to go back in and relink things. We actually think it might be due to creating things with like very different accounts and things. So we are drag and drop updating. Okay. Lost my train of thought there for what we were actually pulling in. So let's see. So when you're in here in your content bank, you'll notice that I changed my view from the tiles over to something like this, where I'm able to look in a list to find things more easily. In a course like this, we have so many different H5P that it could be a little tough to find things. And when I'm adding this, I'm choosing to link to the file. And the reason I choose this link to the file is because if I link to the file and then I later want to update this file, I can go to the content bank, make the changes or updates, and anywhere that I've linked to that file, those updates will automatically get pushed out. If I make a copy, I'm truly making a standalone copy of this content and putting it into the course. So I like to choose link to the file. All right. Now we should actually be in business here. There we go. Go ahead, Gabriel.
So when you link to the file, what happens with the results?
They
Uh,
still are standalone in the individual course, so it doesn't bring them in and combine them over the course of everywhere that you have linked. So it's not going to like aggregate them in that way. The results will remain just within that one course. You can see them.
Okay, so does it create like an alias for the
Yes, and
embedded
that's what it
version?
used to be called. It used to be called an alias, and then they changed that word to link because alias was apparently like really confusing for a lot of people. But that's what it does, is basically creating an alias.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So let's head on back in here. Lessons, lectures, turn our editing off. All right, we looked at drag and drop. We have everything there and reviewing that forum. And the next thing that's opened is interactive video. And I'll bring up the example here, which I probably will have to link again. Nope, I already did that one. Okay. So sometimes the interactive video takes a little bit of time to load the very first time. But once you're in here, you can just let this play and it will play through. Typically, you're going to have your control bar down here at the bottom, and that is something I'm going to fix. So what I often do when I'm showing this as an example is show you like all of the toolbar things down here at the bottom, and I mute it. But basically, with an interactive video, I can build interactions, and I have a couple of options for that. This particular interaction right here is just a text box. It pops up on the screen, tells you a little bit about this activity, and you'll notice that the video has stopped playing in the background. That's a choice that I make. I can choose to let this display for a certain period of time while the video plays on, or I can make the video stop until someone has interacted with this. In this case, their interaction is actually just going to be them clicking someplace, and it moves through, and they can go through. When it comes to interactive video, let's actually move out of here, and I will show you basically what we can do with interactive video. So when it comes to creating an interactive video, you will have the option to add interactions such as text, a navigation hotspot, meaning if I click it, I jump to a different spot in the video. You can put in multiple choice questions, true, false questions. I think drag and drop is an option there. You won't see as many options as you see in course presentation because they don't all necessarily fit for a video. But as you go in here, what you're going to find is you'll see this video all about creating and configuring the different options in a course presentation. So here you'll see I have all of my options there. Let's make that bigger. And I'm just going to speed it way up so it moves fast. But basically, you'll come in and you'll be able to see all about adding things. This video looks a little blurry to me. I might replace this one to make it a newer and more clear one. But there's lots of dialogue going on in the background here as you work through this video, and you will be able to view that video and find all about how to add different content types. The first thing you do is add the video. And there are two main ways to put a video in. You can upload an MP4 if you'd like, or just grab a link from YouTube. So it could be a video you put up or one that someone else put up. You just need the link. And it doesn't matter if the video is unlisted on YouTube, it will still work here. If you're using Vimeo, you can use links from Vimeo Pro, but the other Vimeo plans won't work in an H5P. But the first thing you'll do, you'll see step one, and you will upload the video. Then you'll add the interactions, and the interactions are going to be things like adding in different question types. You can put in breaks or text or put a table over the top of things. You can even have a link that someone can click to go out to another website. So if I'm referencing something, I can put an image over the top. And I have used this in the past when I found an amazing video on YouTube, except for like 1 10-second spot in it was not something I would want my students to do. So instead, I put an image over the top, and in another case, I put a big text box that told them what I did expect them to do. I let the video continue to play in the background, and they just looked at the text, and then we skipped over the part I didn't want them to see. I'm able to add single choice set, multiple choice, true, false, drag and drop, different drag and drop items, as well as a couple of other things, including like a crossroad where I can give them a question. And depending on how they choose, they jump to a part in the video, very similar to what we do in branching scenario. So I can actually, if it were me creating the video, I could create all of these scenarios and then just have people answering questions and jumping to certain points in the video so that even though it's one video, they're only getting one experience in there. So this is what we're going to look at this week for interactive video. So your two content types for this week are going to be drag and drop and interactive video. Interactive video has definitely been one of the more popular things to catch on over the past, I'd say, year. And that first year of going online and really trying to pivot things, I don't think people were really ready for interactive video yet. But now people are seeing some great use for it. So I can use video I already have, but not make it so boring. So someone's not sitting there forever and a day. They can actually interact with things as they go, answer questions. I can actually put in little brain breaks in there where I stop. I have something that pops right up on the screen and tell them we're going to take a quick break here. We're at the 10-minute mark. Get up, walk around, click on this page when you're ready, and then the video will play forward. So I can build in breaks for people. Pausing that video means that if someone gets distracted or has to walk away, the video doesn't continue to play without them there. Um, this happens to me all the time where I'll like start doing something with the video. I get distracted. I come back later. I can't figure out where the sound is that I'm hearing. And it's a video that's playing in a tab that I forgot about on my computer. And that we can prevent that from happening with interactive video. So those are your content types that will open for you this coming week. Is there anything that you all would like to talk about with any of these now before we close it out for today? All right. I'll take your silence as everyone is super excited to start with interactive video and drag and drop. We are here if you need anything. If you need to reach out to me, you can message me here through the site, or you can send me an email and I'm happy to respond. Otherwise, I will see you all here next week when we will look at some new content and do a little review and answer some questions about drag and drop and interactive video. Thanks, Jen. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate your time, and we will talk soon.